But Mr. Singh, if I can just ask you real quick, what would your solution be to the Ambassador Bridge blockade, the Coutts Alberta blockade, the protest in Ottawa? What, in your view, is the way to end it?
Well, first of all, the federal government's been really taking a bit of a hands-off approach. And we've heard it from the Liberal ministers when they had a press conference on the same time, at the same time and day as the City of Ottawa officials, where they said, we're here to help, but it's not our jurisdiction, and Ottawa hasn't requested any help. But Ottawa at the same time was saying we need help and we need actually more assistance. So clearly there's not been communication. What I would do is every community impacted needs a proactive role of the federal government. The Prime Minister needs to meet with the mayors, meet with the municipalities, and proactively offer help. We need to stop the funds that are flowing in from the United States. Very clearly, foreign interference. We know that the initial MOU of the organizers of this convoy want to replace the democratically elected government with a committee. It's clear that they're anti-democratic in that intent, and it's clear that they're targeting people. Normally, protests target the laws or the government's decisions. Here, they're targeting residents, people. They're ostensibly called a trucker protest, but they're actually impeding trucks. So it needs to be taken seriously.
Okay, so how would you stop the funding?
Finding excuses. It has to be about getting help out immediately.
Okay, so I don't know if the money would stop the protest right away, but this is maybe a long-term solution. What are you're worried about U.S. interference and foreign funding coming in, but what law would you determine what money could be sent to any movement? How would you decide, oh, this, you can get online funding for this organization and this cause, but not that cause? Like, if it's not a criminal cause or they're not interfering with elections, by what law would you stop money flowing in?
Well, the foreign interference is about impacting the democracy. And in this case, their goal was stated to replace the elected officials. It was very brazenly stated in their MOU. And so that's cause to say this is clearly an interference with our democracy to fund a group that wants to replace the democratically elected officials. That I think is a clear distinction between any other cause or any other group or organization. It's pretty distinct,
but we
it's
have
pretty
a
unique,
law for that.
And it's pretty brazen.
But we do have a law on foreign interference in our political system already. What would the new law be? Is it because you can't track online funding?
Well, I'm saying that the government has to reach out and say this rises to the level of foreign interference because of their stated goal, which is to replace democratically elected officials. And that given that that's their goal, and that was their stated goal for the past 12, 13 days, that funds that go to support this initiative are inappropriate, and that the Prime Minister should reach out to American counterparts to say this has to stop and work together to investigate the source of the funds and to stop them from coming in. But also taking an approach which is no longer one of hiding behind excuses, but being proactive and making clear decisions to support communities that are impacted. That would make a big difference. And then I also stated, and I agree with people that have been calling for this, we know that people have been vaccinated. People have followed public health measures. But now Canadians want a plan to get to the other side of this pandemic. That's going to mean, obviously, continued vaccination and following healthcare protocols. But people want to know what's going to happen next. And a big part of that is making sure our healthcare system isn't pushed to the brink of collapse. So properly funding it, making sure it can deal with increases in needs, so it's there for people when they need it.
Let me just ask you one thing. Would you support right now lifting the requirement for double vax Canadians traveling across the border to require a PCR test?
So I believe that those type of decisions should be made with evidence and with public health officials. What I think we can do is put in place the steps so that we're not in a position where we are worried about an increased rate of infection over collapsing our healthcare system. And to do that, and to prevent that legitimate fear, which has happened a number of times in this pandemic, we need to properly fund our healthcare system. So that decision to properly fund it would take away some of the burden of why we need the restrictions. But the decision about mandates and restrictions, these are decisions that should be made by public health officials with evidence that's in the best interest of Canadians. And that's the way those decisions should be made.
I know you got to run, but last question. Just going back to this foreign funding. Because you got to be careful when you're making a law. If you made a law that would do what?
Well, I'm not making a law. I'm saying that they should reach out to figure out what happened and stop the flow of funds. So I'm saying using the existing tools that we have and by speaking with the American counterparts, raise that this is political interference, foreign interference, and it shouldn't happen.
There is a tool, the Financial Action Task Force, which is used for money laundering. That can track sources of funding. Is that useful?
That would be absolutely useful. There's other ways to track funds. The money laundering and the existing financial tools that we have at the federal level would be very helpful. This is an important thing to tackle. We don't want foreign-funded attempts to undermine our democracy. People can support initiatives and organizations and groups. That's different from a clear, concerted effort to undermine our democracy. That's where we need to draw the line, and that's what I'm saying the Prime Minister needs to get to the bottom of and stop.
Okay, I know you got to run. Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP, appreciate you making the time.
Of course.